Hello folks, let's focus on New York Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, whose views on immigration have recently come under fire. She's renowned for her passionate and often heated speeches on immigrant rights, and now suddenly being tormented by the same reality she advocates.
It has for years, and AOC is a liar. Let's call it for what it is. She says that a visit to the border is something, quote, we're actively planning on. Was she actively planning on wearing an all-white outfit again, complete with the hair and makeup right out of the Oscars? Will a photographer just happen to be there to caption the raw, totally there it is, unrehearsed moment? Because that wasn't acting or anything. I mean, she's had 2.5 years under this administration, Liz, to take a flight down to Texas or Arizona, but instead she's constantly playing on Instagram like a teenager suffering from attention deficit disorder. And she's never going to go to the border in that outfit with the photographer because she's a phony on this issue. She doesn't care about sex trafficking of children. She doesn't care about the 100,000 adults being killed by fentanyl every year. She doesn't care about the hundreds that have crossed into this country illegally who happen to be on the FBI terror watch list. To go to the border, that would require her holding a Democratic administration accountable. And this is a person who ultimately is about power, holding on to it, and her own massive ego based on these photos that she took a couple years ago, pretending to care.
Tonight, chaos in front of the Roosevelt Hotel in New York City as protesters greeted Democratic lawmakers with blowhorns and backlash over the growing migrant crisis.
What message are you sending to the world? Break the law, come, we give you everything free. Joe Biden, you think that's going to stop?
More than a dozen members of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, including Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, took a tour of the large migrant processing center. But their remarks mostly drowned out by the angry crowd.
As you can see, this is a contentious issue, but we are all Americans, and we all believe in the American dream.
At least 1,000 migrants have showed up in the city each and every month.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, or AOC as she's commonly known, has been a prominent advocate for migrant rights. Her impassioned speeches and tweets have often portrayed her as a champion of the marginalized. However, it appears that her virtue signaling on the migrant issue is coming back to haunt her.
Close the border! That's why you just want people in the vote! You want people in the vote! What the hell's wrong with this America? This is the United States of America! Yeah, that's what is this? What is this here then? Yeah, barriers for who?
AOC's strong peach has earned her a large following, but it has also put her in the limelight. She has completely ignored the complicated issues and difficulties of immigration. We all know that AOC's rhetoric does not necessarily correspond with the real solutions required to address immigration issues. As a result, some of us believe that the border should be closed and President Biden held accountable for the issue. The concern is, if the president isn't taking care of us now, will he take care of us when there are more immigrants in the country? Let's move on to the AOC encounter. AOC recently had a challenging incident that highlighted the difficulties she confronts when dealing with immigration. She was unable to speak due to the loud protests, demonstrating that facing the issue is not simple. But she should have come up with a solution. Of course, our people are concerned about the future of their children, and they require an explanation. Many people believe that if immigrants enter the nation illegally, it's not harsh to foresee that they will breach more laws. They stress the significance of following due process.
AOC is uniquely irritating and self-righteous, so watching her get cornered at the very apex of her incessant virtue signaling meeting harsh reality was delicious. It was delicious because her terrified face as she confronted the reality of all her rhetoric about this issue coming back to haunt her, and the public making it very clear, very, very clear that this is all completely ridiculous and it's on her. And she couldn't deal with it. She looked terrified.
Because of Biden's border collapse, cities such as Chicago, Los Angeles, and New York had to spend billions of dollars. As a result, people's property taxes will rise. To be more specific, housing, feeding, and caring for all of these people will cost $4 billion in New York City alone. The budget for the homeless, people who live here, and Americans is only $171 million. So, consider that. $4 billion for illegal immigrants, $171 million for actual homeless people, and supporting our own. By the way, there are veterans on the street as well, so that's where we are right now. priorities in order.
And by the way, where is the border czar on all of this? Kamala Harris, the vice president, took one 5-minute trip to the border about a year ago, and she hasn't spoken about it since. The president of the United States, same deal, never speaks about this issue. Maybe that's because the Biden administration is polling in the 20s when it comes to handling of the border or lack thereof of this border. 7 million people have entered this country under this administration illegally. Think about what 7 million is. That's more than the total population of 38 individual U.S. states. Our healthcare, our education resources are being overrun and exhausted. But hey, there's an election coming up, so at least one side of the political aisle is going to turn a blind eye to this because it hurts them politically. They simply don't care. There's a humanitarian and national security crisis at the southern border.
AOC's call for migrants to get work permits as soon as possible stirred up concerns. Do you not believe that proper vetting and background checks should come first? Protesters were upset with politicians, including President Biden, for what they saw as a lack of accountability. As a result, it's important for public leaders like AOC to engage with all sides of the argument, especially when they encounter strong opposition.
I actually couldn't hear what she was saying because the protesters were so loud, but I went back and read it, and her idea is not to fix the border, secure the border, stem the flow of migrants. Her idea was we need more money from the federal government and communities to deal with the migrant crisis, which will not end it. Number two, she wants work permits for those who've come to the country to compete with low-end American workers, driving wages further down. And then she wants protections for Venezuelans, who, by the way, are fleeing Venezuela because of the very same policies that she's advocating for here in the United States.
And you know where she isn't? She isn't on the border, where she spent most of the time during Donald Trump's presidency.
In white
you may
jeans.
remember crying at the border. Now she's never, ever down there because the reality, again, is that whether it's in America or the UK, where we have all these small boats coming in carrying illegal immigrants, or Italy, or wherever it may be, the problem is the same everywhere. The public, generally speaking, the vast majority of the public do not want to see porous borders allowing millions of illegal immigrants around the world coming into countries illegally, because they think, quite rightly, many people go through the legal process, and that's the way immigration should be, and that's the way it functions properly. AOC knows that, but she won't go down there now because it's Biden and Democrats,
right.
And she should. I'd admire her more if she'd stopped virtue signaling in New York and got down to that border again and cried over what her guy's done, because it's been a lot worse than anything Trump did.
The incident acted as a sharp reminder of the heated and frequently divisive debate over immigration policies in the United States. It underscores how difficult it is for politicians like AOC to find common ground on such a sensitive issue. Let us now extend our horizons. Is it essential to recognize that the issue of mass migration is not unique to the United States? Countries all across the world, particularly Italy and the United Kingdom, are dealing with the issues provided by an increasing number of migrants. The strain on resources and populations is undeniable.
You mentioned Italy, and it's not just the United States that's reeling from this massive influx of migrants. If we can take a look at this is video that was shot on this tiny, I'm redundant, I know that. It's a tiny Italian island called Lampedusa. Might have mispronounced that. In just a 24-hour span, the island's population of roughly 6,000 people, more than double with the arrival of at least 7,000 migrants, mostly from North Africa. And I know Douglas Murray was writing about this in the New York Post. There have been a lot of articles written about this. But this is a problem where you incentivize law breaking, and and this is something that's been ignored here in the United States, but it becomes irreversible.
It is, and this problem will only get worse. And as I say, there are many people, whether it's America, it's the UK, Italy, and other countries, who go through the lawful process to become immigrants in countries. America was founded on immigration, right? I don't think most Americans instinctively are anti-immigrant because they'd be anti their own ancestors. What Americans want, the same in Britain, they just want things to be done properly and lawfully. And when you have this kind of, at the moment, quite catastrophic opening up of borders or failure to properly seal them, then you're going to get a lot of ill will. And what AOC discovered when she met New Yorkers is that New Yorkers think this is a ridiculous way to handle a situation.
Alexis, illegal crossings are skyrocketing here at the southern border. Border Patrol simply cannot keep up with the numbers of people coming across the border. Mass releases are underway, and some migrants are heading to sanctuary cities.
It's no problem if I go to Chicago. Either you want. Thank you.
This was the scene in San Diego yesterday, where several hundred migrants were mass released by Border Patrol to a city sidewalk. Meanwhile, Arizona's Tucson sector has seen nonstop illegal crossings this week, averaging around 2,000 per day, with Fox cameras seeing large numbers of single adult men from Africa crossing as migrants continue crossing illegally from all over the world.
Protect the city!
And residents back here in New York City demanding answers.
You don't know who's coming into these places. Molesters, murderers, they just let them in, okay? Meanwhile, an American that's sitting on the street doesn't have $1 for a piece of bread? Whose fault is this?
The global scope of this problem highlights its complexities, as well as the need for thoughtful and comprehensive solutions. AOC's experiences are only one element of a much larger and more complex problem. Our people believe that AOC won't be in Congress for long and are relieved that American voices are being heard. They want their elected officials to listen, respect, and honor the concerns of citizens. Finding the answers our country needs requires serious, respectful, and open discussion among Americans. Thank you for joining us on Red Alert. We'll be right back with more discussions on pressing topics in the future. Until then, stay tuned. Goodbye, America.